Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode on this rambly thoughts of the week, or my discussion of the week, whatever one I've decided to call it this week. I wanted to talk to you about something that I've touched on in the past, and it's called mental health and cars. I touched on this subject, I believe, within the first few months of actually doing proper YouTube videos. And I kind of spoke about my experiences with mental health and cars, and how cars have been a massive, almost empowerment in my life, particularly at times where I was not at my highest and probably at my lowest. And it's somehow dug me out of the doldrums a little bit. But can cars, this is the question, can cars actually cause mental health as much as eradicate most of it? I think that's the right wording I would use, because when I was going through a seriously bad patch in my life, the one constant drive I had was that Mark 1 Focus down the road. Well, it was outside my flat on the driveway at the time. And that car was the one driving force in my life, that the one constant. There were several changes in my life that unfortunately I had little to no control over, and it felt like I needed something to grab onto. And well, a car is a car, it's not going anywhere until you decide to move it on. And the car gave me a lot of focus, again, no pun intended on that one. So it kept me going, and it kept me motivated to continue the daily doldrums of life while things weren't quite feeling great up here. And I think I think there's a lot of people, I'm sure some of you guys may have some experiences of how mental health and cars has kind of come together for yourself in a rather positive way, like I've just described. But equally, mental health can either go the other way with cars, and it is a concerning factor amongst the car community that so many people have, well, not openly admitted to me, but some people have been very honest and said, you know, I really struggle and my car has really helped me in my life. And I'm very privileged that people have been very open with me about that, because I'm an open sort of person, and I like to think that I'm quite approachable and discreet as well. Obviously, I'm not going to name anybody in this video, because that's the whole idea of mental health. I don't discuss personal cases nor examples where someone's identity could be revealed. But I'm just going to use some brief examples of what I've experienced myself, and maybe what I've heard from others. This hobby with cars, it's addictive, isn't it? It is a truly addictive hobby, and sometimes we lose track of reality. Paying the bills, paying the vet, the home insurance, the rent, the mortgage, whatever it could be, paying income taxes, or tax returns, that sort of thing. Paying basically the daily stuff, even going to the shops for shopping for food and drink. These things can somewhat feel like an unnecessary distraction when you've got a really strong hobby when it comes to cars. And from my own personal perspective, I've actually gone through periods where I've actually not had my eye on the ball of the real realities of life, and actually, you know, got through it, and managed to keep everything organised and nicely ticking over to make sure that I'm comfortable and that I'm healthy enough to enjoy the hobby. Because ultimately, owning a load of cars means absolutely nothing if you're about to become homeless, or if you haven't got enough food on the table for a start. You know, all those jokes that people say, oh, I've had to buy several loads of cars, I've had to spend a fortune on the paintwork and bodywork this month, I'm going to have to live on bread and water for the next few months. This is the thing. I mean, sometimes people say it like an exaggerated joke, and I've naturally said it in the past, but actually somewhat of it is actually true. There are people out there who want their car to be as amazing as ever, but don't necessarily have the income, like most of us, I think, to actually pay for that, because bodywork and paintwork cost thousands. I mean, who has that sort of money when you're trying to, pay the mortgage off or save a little bit of money? I mean, how are you supposed to do this on top of maintaining a hobby that gives you an awful lot of joy? And we don't think about things like that when just for nothing. We actually really want to do these things, but we have to live within the reality of life that could cause some serious financial issues and stress. And I've seen so many people, in myself included, I've probably in this group as well, who spent more money than what they've earned at one stage, and have had to balance the books by digging into the savings or going and borrowing a bit of money to make sure that it's all paid for. Now, there is a certain logic to the way my mindset works and my own finances, and I knew that the paintwork on the Focus was definitely coming up. So I had to do something about it in the long run before. So I made sure that before start, I made sure I did as much work as possible myself and not fishing the work out, because every time you pay the garage to do a job, whether it's, I don't know, tracking or, tracking's actually a bad example, for like little suspension jobs or little nickety jobs here and there that I think, oh, I can do that, or timing belt change. It adds up, it cuts in, and that money could be used for the paintwork. So I had to do as much of the work as possible, and I had to leave the paintwork to last of all, to make sure that I've got a good ground solid car for that paint to be slapped onto. And I had to make sure that I had enough money saved up in order to pay for that. So in terms of finances, I was okay, but at the same time, a lot of people are scrimping and saving to try and make their dreams come true. And I think sometimes, and I'm going to come to this a few times in this episode, I think it takes somebody to come up to you and say, hold your horses. Let's have a look at how many cars you've got, what's going on, what state of various tunes are they, is that being restored, is that MOT'd, is that on the road, etc, etc. And to decide and maybe have some other eyes to say, I think we need to get rid of a car here, or maybe we need to spend less on this car because it's working now and concentrate on this. And I think that is a really good hindsight. If you've got a friend who actually isn't into cars, or a friend who's into cars but not into the cars that you own, so they have no emotional connection or interest in the cars you own. I have no interest in Daihatsus. So if I was advising somebody who had a collection of Daihatsus, honestly, I don't know who's got a collection of Daihatsus, and let's say he's got 7 of them, and he needs to get rid of he needs to get rid of a few, but he can't admit it himself. So I would go in there and say, right, okay, you got 7 cars. Let's get rid of at least 4 and leave you with 3. And we decide which ones to get rid of. Now, I could go in there and do that and give that advice because I'm not emotionally connected with any of them cars. So I will just see them for what they are. Is it working? Is it not working? Is that going to get good value? Is that too far gone? Is that for breaking and scrapping? You've got to make those decisions and have somebody with a keen eye who actually is completely neutral. The problem is when you ask somebody who isn't a car enthusiast, it sometimes comes across as, well, why do you even bother doing this hobby at all? So that's not really a solution there. But you do need somebody who's interested in cars to come up to you and say, I think to pay for the paintwork on that car, you need to get rid of a car. Now, I will tell you one thing. When I had the first round of paintwork done on the Focus, I didn't even have Beatrix, let alone Ruby the Fiesta. So I only had 1 car. And I knew that as soon as I bought the second car, which would be a replacement for what was the daily Focus, and was to replace it becoming a daily itself, although the Rover is barely daily, it's semi-daily. Pretty much, it's not every day that I drive that car, I don't have to. But I knew as soon as I bought that car is therefore going to come with its own list of problems, and that's going to take away money and time from the Focus. So I couldn't do it. I had to make sure the Focus was as good as possible first up. And then, I think this video is going astray, don't you? But you'll get the picture while I'm saying this. And then you can pay for the paintwork. And then once the paintwork is done, on the worst part of the car, the dents, the rust, then you can buy the second car. And it worked out perfectly. Bought Beatrix at the right time. And it was a compromise. Last year when I had the second round of paint done on the Focus on the other side, which turned out just as bad really in terms of the cost, I had less of an income because naturally I've got two cars and I've only got one income. Unless you have a big massive pay rise, you're going to have to split it into two. And my point is in all this, this could rather lead to a rather financially stressful situation, and that will really add to the mental health toll on cars. I mean, I know people, and I think, Rob, you might be watching this, so go watch what I say. No, I'm joking. You'll know what I'm saying. Um, Rob has his own car collection, and like many car collectors, he buys one, then he gets rid of it, then he buys another one, and then one minute he's saying, no, I'm not going to buy any more cars this month, and then he buys another car in the same month. We've all done it. I'm afraid we've all done it. We say we're not going to have another car. I mean, look, take me for example. I've got 3 cars now. Okay, don't need any more cars. Can't afford a 4th car. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3 cars. I don't know how sustainable that will be in the long run. This is quite interesting because I see other YouTubers who have like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I've lost count of some of their cars, how many they have, and I just think, how is this working? Like, in what feasible sense is this working? That's never been on the road for 6 months. That's not been on the road for years. That one needs a complete restoration. And you say you're going to get round to it, but you're never going to get round to it because you keep saying that for 3 or 4 years. That one's got serious problems. That one is just a rubbish. You could go on forever about it. But don't you look at some of these car fleets and you think, this is stressful. This is absolutely horrific. How does this person get up in the morning and go to work and stay sane, knowing that they've got several cars that don't work, and they're not going to be worth much if they're not working? So even if trying to sell them on is a bit of a problem. And I just think, especially when they're throwing money at these cars and put money into them, you're thinking, I couldn't deal with that. I couldn't deal with that. I've got 3. That's enough for me. 3 cars are a nightmare. I mean, recently, a couple of months ago, we had a situation where the Focus was obviously off the road, hadn't been used, don't want to use it because it's wet and it's salty on the roads. Ruby was not MOT'd, and the Rover, my only car, decided to, play up on the MOT, blow a load of its coolant out, and I had a leak from the coolant rail, which was difficult to get hold of. Thanks to Darren, who sorted me out, I was able to get back on the road in a matter of days. That could have been serious. Without that coolant rail, I could have been off the road without a car. Well, I'd had to have done something, but I could have been without a car for a few weeks. I had a whole week where I was walking to work. I mean, luckily I'm in a situation where the infrastructure in my life allows me to actually not have a car. I don't need a car to get to and from work because I live so close to work. The point is though, I have 3 cars and none of them worked. Now to somebody else who isn't into cars, you think, are you losing your marbles or something? And I'm thinking, I'm walking home from work thinking exactly the same thing. I have 3 cars in great condition, but for various different reasons, they're all off the road, not working or not MOT'd. And it's like, how has this ended up being this way? No matter how many cars you buy, you can't fill a gap and you will always be short. If you have several cars, that essentially means you've only got one income. You're going to have to spread your income around. And therefore, it becomes like a compiled mess in which there's no guarantee that you're going to have a working car. I've heard stories where people say, "Oh, I've got 6 cars because at least one of them will be working at any one time." Haha, I think not. I've known people with more cars than that, and not one of them work, and sometimes not one of them's working for weeks on end, and it really is that bad. That's where mental health for me, guys, is a big problem with cars. It just can't be done. I mean, in terms of car collections itself and it becoming a really obsessive obscenity, is, as I say, I'm not looking for any cars this year. 2024, my fleet of cars is set. There will be no new cars on this channel in this year, as far as I can help it, unless something drastic happens, and I can't foresee that happening. That is not in the plan, basically. I don't intend, because I'm not intending to buy a new car. You'd think, so Andrew's going to focus on the 3 cars he's got, fixing them, improving them, going to shows, enjoying what he's doing, improving the Focus Mark 1 and growing the Focus Mark 1 preservation group, which is growing, and not looking at Facebook Marketplace adverts. Just why am I doing this? Why am I on my phone looking at Facebook Marketplace? I mean, am I going to buy any of these cars? No. Do I need any of the cars? Well, no. So why am I looking at it? Just because I want to. It's like an obsessive compulsion. I mean, have you found that? You know, we're looking for cars that we can't afford, that we know we can't buy, but you're still looking at them. This is a really dangerous hobby, this is. And people have got themselves into serious debt and mayhem by growing this huge car collection from absolutely nothing, having like 5 or 6 cars on the driveway, and most of them are completely unused for most months of the year because there's too many cars. Look, one person, you can't multiply yourself. There's not 2 or 3 Andrews out there. There's only one Andrew. So why would I have 6 cars knowing that, well, I'm already, you know, spreading my weight around 3 cars. If there was another 3 cars, that would mean pretty much most of my cars could go, each car could go months without being used. And I think that is really, really a bad place to be in terms of car ownership. It's just not good for your mental health in any degree whatsoever. And I just think we've got to this point now where with old cars and classic cars, nostalgia is extremely powerful. It's so powerful that people are looking at old cars, and I'm referring to probably pre-1995 cars, okay? Because any car, I would say, pre-1995 or maybe even pre-2000, they're at least 24 years old plus. And I'm thinking, you're going into a pit. It's a deep, dark pit of parts and financial worry. And I say, when I say parts, I mean, you're going to need a lot of parts. You're going to need to spend money on these cars to keep them working for as long as possible. And if you're not doing that, you're not going to get a very good ownership experience. And I think people have got this rose-tinted vision that classic cars are somehow an amazing thing, and you can run them for absolutely next to nothing and have a wonderful time, and it's all roses and flowers. And I think that is such a dangerous concept, and it is not a concept that I promote on this channel. Yes, classic cars can be an amazing hobby, but you have to know what you're getting into, and I've said that so many times. And I've seen people get themselves into personal debt and mental health issues because they've bought cars, they've got that release of endorphins. God, I've actually finally done it. I've agreed the deal, and I'm going to get this lovely Ford Capri, whatever it is. And then when it actually arrives and you see the car sitting in front of you, you think, yeah, this is great. Then you start seeing problems, and then it doesn't start, and then you have more problems, and you think, oh God. And then reality suddenly hits your head. This is too much. And this is what happens with a lot of, this is where mental health really, your mental health is affected by the cars themselves. Classic cars are not for everyone. And I really don't think it should be romanticised the way it is. Classic car restorations, they are stressful. And I unless you are mentally prepared to say, right, that car there, it needs a full-on restoration. I know that I'm going to have to spend thousands and thousands over the next few years without seeing that car touch the road. That's what you've got to think about. That car isn't going to see the road. Obviously, every car is different in a few years' time. And I'm going to spend thousands on this car. And if you are prepared to spend 3 years, maybe more, of your life building a car from nothing back to scratch, then that's amazing. But if you're having second thoughts, don't even go there. Classic car restorations are not as romantic as what they're made out on the TV, nor in the media, nor in the magazines. It's hard. It's really, really hard. And you really only hear, particularly in the classic car magazines, you only really hear about the success stories. Yes, you hear about the ups and downs of a restoration. Let's say, you know, Practical Classics have done a feature on somebody's fantastic restoration, which they always do every single month. And this particular car, I don't know, say it's an Austin Metro, which was absolutely, it was going to go to scrap. And now it's like one of the best ones. And the owner's gone through leaps and bounds getting the car from that to this in about, let's say, 5 years. Hard journey, right? Because they wanted a Metro and they found the right car that they wanted to own. And that's fantastic. And that's what's going to get you through a restoration. But what that doesn't show is the stark reality of the percentage of restorations that actually fail and stop completely. Now, I reckon there's no facts that I can trawl through because no research has been done on this. But I reckon if you did a poll of the amount of people who've done classic car restorations and not got anywhere near the end and given up and had to sell and have actually come out of it worse off, far worse off, without seeing a penny back, I think that's in a majority. I think the minority of restorations are people who really want to get the job done at some considerable cost, but they do it and they are reaping the results. Some people have had no choice. Family issues, housing issues, life issues, got to get rid of the car. Fair enough. That's exactly what I would do. But equally, what is not promoted, obviously, is the amount of restorations that go on unheard in people's own lives, and people are really sad. People get themselves into such a deep dark corner of financial misery because of a piece of metal at the end of the day. And I honestly believe this is where mental health for me, it starts with one thing. I go and buy a car that's a good base to start with. I had never bought a car that is rusty. I walk away. I just walk away. Hopefully in the future I'll have the skills in order to start welding my own pieces of metal on my own cars, which might be very soon actually. But equally, reason why I bought Beatrix in the first place was because I saw the condition underneath, and I thought, despite what I see on the outside, what I see on the underside is a solid base of a car. I'm buying it. And that's where you start off, and look how good that car is. And that's the vision that I had from the start, that I knew where I wanted to take that car. The Focus has always been a relatively solid car because I've always kept on top of the car, and has always been a solid base to put my money. The Fiesta, Ruby, solid base. Every single one of my cars just have scabs and blisters all over the place. Maybe a tiny bit of metal here and there in limited corners. The point is, I don't financially go in for cars that need serious amounts of thousands and thousands of pounds worth of welding starting on it before I've even begun. And that is where I am motivated for a car, because I know that it's for me, it's a controlled situation. If I buy a car and I know, well, the rest of it's solid, but it needs a little bit doing to the sill, that's fine. I can sort of control that factor within my financial constraints and budget of a project. And I think that's where it makes, I'm quite excited for cars. When I know that I can look at a car and turn that car around into an amazing car, like I did with Beatrix, and I can financially do it. I can't wait to get started, and that's where the motivation starts for me. I think there's nothing more worse than starting a restoration on a car that really doesn't have a good solid base for me. When you're having to go down the route of reshelling, or cutting a quarter of the car out and having it new. I'm sorry, I think there's a point where restorations go too far, and this video has encompassed so many things. But mental health with cars, it starts with how you deal with your car collection. What sort of car relationship do you have? Are you one that likes restorations and rebuilds? Or are you somebody that tries, like me, to buy good examples from the start, but just improve them in every other area? And I think that's my area. Because for me, and this is the truth, mental health can be a massively positive thing with older cars, but it's only because I'm getting a massive amount back. And whatever you get out of these cars, whether you just like stare, I mean, I like looking at my cars, personally. I like standing on the drive and I like looking at them, especially when they've been washed and polished and cleaned. But some people, and I like driving them as well, some people get a lot more out of driving them than fixing them. Now, if you're that sort of person, I'd recommend that you try and buy as good a car as you can, because you're going to find it mentally very challenging buying a car that is quite dilapidated and needs lots of work. Whereas if you're the sort of person that enjoys the tinkering aspect as well, it's happy days, you get both. So you have to buy a car that you think is going to be a really suitable one for your mental health and how your mind ticks. So you understand your mind more than anybody else. And for that reason, you should just consolidate what you actually enjoy about a car and have a think about whether the car you're looking at is one that you can afford. Is it going to make you happy? Is it going to give you the feedback that you really want? There's a load more factors to that. And if you can say yes to every single one of them, then go for it. But equally, I've got the biggest top tip ever for people who are constantly obsessed about buying cars, and are the sort of people that would literally say, I'm not buying a car like this year, and then they go and buy another few. And then they sell a couple and then buy another few. I would recommend that comes from an impulse sometimes. I think impulse purchasing is a problem. Same sort of people who go on eBay and buy impulse purchases that think when it actually finally arrives, they think, why did I buy that? Why did I buy that? Same with car boot sales. I know people that go to car boot sales and buy all sorts of stuff that I think is junk, but they probably didn't think was junk at the time. But then they brought it home, had a few days with those items, and then they think, oh yeah, I think it was just junk. And I recommend, to prevent that situation, one thing. If you're looking on Facebook Marketplace, eBay, wherever it is, if you're looking at a car and you really think you want it and it's the right car for you, I'd hold your horses. Hold your horses. Yes, the car could go to somebody else in the meantime while you're staggering, but that's okay, because somebody has actually saved you from buying a car. That's not necessarily a bad thing. But I honestly think you should take 24 hours to 48 hours to walk away and have a really good think about that potential purchase that you're thinking about. And if you still feel the same way in 48 hours, then it might just be the car for you. But I usually think, in terms of my mental health, my mind, that 48 hours in the past has been enough to stop me buying cars. The cars that I could have bought on impulse is scary. And I think it's about curbing that. So that's my top tip for this whole episode. Impulse control. Give yourself 48 hours to assess whether a car is for you or not. Because you don't want to get yourself into a whole deep dark pit of mental health. And mental health will therefore be a positive thing if you've got the car that you really want, really like, and you know you can afford. And I think that is the biggest top tip that I can give to anyone. Anyway, guys, thank you for tuning into this lovely rambly episode, of which I've talked about everything from mental health to car restorations and car buying advice. And I shall see you in another very similar episode, possibly. Take care.